This government meeting is brought to you by Eastworks and our local cable subscribers.
Do we have?
Okay, so we do. Yeah, we're missing a few, but
Oh my gosh.
but I will. I'll note who's in attendance, and I'll keep an eye on who's joining as well. So if anyone else joins or comes and goes, that's perfectly fine. And just a reminder, we are being recorded, so anyone who checks in on this later on, we'll just want to make sure we keep it cordial, of course. Is anyone willing to record minutes as we go?
I'm willing to give it a go. I brought paper for the purpose. I'm not very fast though.
I appreciate it. If you miss anything, just give a shout or feel free to check in afterwards and we can fill in holes. So I suppose, first question, Mike, what's your status? Was the select board able to turn things around for you quickly, or is that still pending?
I am a member in waiting. Apparently.
Okay.
I had correspondence with Chris Fallis. They did not vote to increase the committee size yet because they're waiting for Ed to propose something, but they're willing to consider that. I think on the 30th is their next meeting. They're going to do that. And in correspondence, they said if Mike has an application in, it is a chance that he would also be voted at that time. But yeah, they haven't increased the size yet, but expect it to be on the agenda.
I submitted my application, so Ed has it.
Perfect. Okay, so at the time being, we're still at a committee of 8. We have 5, sorry, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. We have 6 committee members here. So we're just missing, it looks like, David and Paul. So we have a quorum, we're good to go. I think we're technically supposed to review meeting minutes from the last meeting. I have those up on My Town Government. I can share them now if need be. I don't get the impression that there's much to revisit as far as action goes, but does anyone have a need, preference, curiosity to review minutes from our, I believe it was November meeting, or any left questions left unanswered, items that we should revisit?
I don't know if it's important, but time bond is B-O-N-D.
B-O-N-D-E.
Is that important?
Yeah,
I don't know.
B-O-N-D.
Yeah, and is down there, the next couple lines, there's a blank, received fully executed blank from the state. What is the blank?
Okay.
How do we access those minutes?
They're on My Town Government, and they're included as a Microsoft doc, docx. Let's see.
In the town of Southampton, under the Greenway Committee?
No, My Town Government.
Yeah, My Town Government is the site, and then you can choose the Greenway Committee as, I think there's a link to it to give you a list of recent meetings. And then if you open the November 9th meeting, I think there's a section that says minutes and associated documents. The minutes are there as Microsoft Word attachment. And I am seeing a few edits. I don't remember if received fully executed.
Well, is it, first of all, how long is this document and how easy is it for you to put up on the screen? And if it just takes like 1 minute or 2 minutes for us to screen down and vote to approve, then, I think it's fine to do that now.
Okay, let's give it a shot.
2.5 pages.
So I'm sharing my screen, and you should be able to see.
Bigger? I can see it, but it's like teeny tiny.
Oh, let's see.
Oh, great. That's great. Okay.
All right. So I believe David was the author here. Let's see, 8 committee members. Yeah, there was discussion of 9 to get to an odd number. Tie and bond. This is an editable document because David shared it with me as well, I believe. So I can go back and make these edits. I can correct the tie and bond spelling.
Also, just to be nitpicky, it's an ampersand between tie and bond and not the word and.
Okay.
The blank line, 2 or 3 lines below, what is that supposed to be?
Yeah, what is this received fully executed underline from the state? What What does that mean?
I think that was the,
Yeah, 2 months ago. I don't remember. I guess
that was their agreement not to intervene on the rail banking process. They had a ability to be sort of right of first refusal, I think.
So should there be something filled in on that line?
Yeah.
Yes.
Refusal of right of way, I guess, is
Would it be first right of refusal?
first right of refusal for the,
I'll go
Okay.
back and I'll see if I have that in an attachment as well. I can probably get the actual title.
Can somebody just fill that right in?
Yeah, I can
Not
edit the
here.
document.
Not at this point.
Because if you can fill it in right now, do we need to approve these minutes?
I'll be honest, I'm not sure.
Okay.
I'm willing to admit that I've not been extremely official with my running of committee meetings to this
We
point.
can approve them with changes, and those 2 or 3 minor changes, we can approve them with those minor changes.
Okay, so if it's fair to say that I'm taking notes on the changes due, I can download and make the edit to the document after this and then re-upload, because I don't think anyone else has access to my town government for the committee anyway. So I can update this afterwards. But yeah, this for now is just for the sake of the discussion. I can take the edits, and then if we accept, I guess, otherwise, then we'll check that box.
Hmm.
I'll just continue to scroll slowly. Let me know if anyone wants
That's
me to
great.
speed up or slow down.
That's great. Yeah.
actually on the second page, there's a thing in asterisk, looks like our funding issues for the night are figured out. Should we just delete that? I'm not sure what it's actually saying.
And especially considering that we changed some of the funding numbers.
On the page that we're on now?
Yes. It's down, there's a double asterisk down below. Now it's,
So
now
I
it's
think this was
the
just
page.
this here. I think this is just conversation that said we'll move on from discussing finances to next topics. I mean, if you guys want, I can extract this.
Okay, I just wasn't
I
sure
would
how to
say
interpret that.
extract it.
Yeah, I agree.
Okay.
So that's the second change.
There's tie and bond change, the filling in the blank, and
Yep.
that
So
change.
this is the
three
third
changes.
change.
Okay.
Third change. Okay. Hmm.
I vote to approve the minutes with changes.
So I think this is Ellen Singhas would like a first draft. I think it was like write a first draft. And that was done and submitted. Right? Remember that thing that?
Yep.
So it's like not like, but write. WRITE.
Okay.
Yeah. Hmm.
You take that line out about Janet Brown.
It'll be years before you can cross the bridges.
Yeah.
No, but a little farther down, Janet Brown agrees to appear on screen for the next meeting. I don't think this needs to be part of the minutes.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's very casual and conversational. AT doesn't have free time. That's actually very true. I don't
Maybe
care if
it'll go
that's-
on 2 pages
Yeah, if this is not valuable and if this is just conversation, I can remove the casual comments too.
I think that's a good idea.
Okay.
Motion to approve as with the changes.
Second.
Okay.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Okay, good.
Okay, I will do that hopefully right after this
Oh
meeting.
my God, we're not used to voting. It's
Don't say that. We're being
been so long since we've had a quorum.
That is true.
The A-team. Okay.
Okay, so the first item I had on the agenda was reviewing membership. So if anyone missed it, Michael said it's pending at the moment. The select board will be voting on the status of a 9th member. So there's no change at the moment. If they vote to approve, Michael's application is in. I would support him rejoining and having 9 members, having an odd member. If anyone feels differently, feel free to chime in, but that's the status of membership as I see it. Okay, moving on. The next item I had, really just for review, success of the acquisition. So I received the deed, I think it was December 27th from Ed. And I think just for the sake of the meeting, I've actually been contacted a whole bunch through the Greenway Committee email address since then. Really, there's been a lot of curiosity, a lot of unknown information. So people are really looking to know what's going to happen next and how it impacts them, especially if their property abuts the rail line. So I figured it was a good time just to review, what does this mean? What does rail banking mean? And I think that there's a lot of worry that the closing or the acquisition is similar to eminent domain. So I just figure since this is being recorded and since we're kind of in a public forum here, I just wanted to review and state that I don't think there will be major changes to abutters, or at least no property being taken over and really no substantial changes similar to how eminent domain would work, I believe. Really, we're looking to change the surface, not take over property. But rail banking, as far as I understand, is really not the town buying and taking ownership. It's not closing like you're buying a house with cash. It's an extended lease agreement, it seems, with Pioneer Valley Railroad, because they've abandoned for an extended period of time the rail lines. So that frees up the town to use funding to access the rail lines and convert it to a recreational path. Please correct me if I'm wrong, if anyone has a different take on rail banking and how it pertains to the town.
I think it also means that if the rail company wants to utilize that corridor in the future, they're able to. So it preserves their right to use that as a rail line if the need ever becomes a true need.
That's my understanding as well. So is it safe to say that they technically still own the rail line? They're just allowing access to it for a fee to the town?
I'm not positive on the actual, legal implications, but I do know that they reserve the right to be able to use that corridor in the future if they want to.
Yeah. Okay.
I believe your statement is accurate. If people want, there's a online Rails to Trails site that has some good information about the rail ranking process. I can try to send a link to that in a future email.
I think that's a good idea. And I think it would be a good idea if we all read that pretty carefully. Because if we're going to be speaking with members of the community in the near future about this, we should all be pretty well versed and able to answer their questions.
Right. I think Mike and Doric will recall that we researched this to an extreme, because without rail banking, a bike path probably would not be possible.
Mm-hmm.
Correct. So the advantage of rail banking is that this corridor, or rail corridors in general, are often, especially in the East, were often assembled through like a whole range of tactics. So that is, the railroad didn't simply acquire a 4.25 mile corridor in Southampton. Rather, it acquired, Dan or Doric, you may remember the number, 70 or 80 some odd little stretches,
Right.
which were then assembled into a corridor. Some of those stretches were acquired in fee simple through an outright purchase. Some were acquired by eminent domain. And you guys may know there may have been some third or fourth other methods by which they were acquired. What rail banking protects from in particular is that when a railroad abandons a corridor, with that, if there's no kind of protection, no kind of rail banking protection in particular, those stretches that were assembled, acquired by eminent domain, revert to the abutter. So rail banking in particular, as I understand it, protects against that reversion to abutters.
Right.
So, i.e., if 150 years ago, somebody took a little stretch of land abutting my property by eminent domain for a rail corridor, they then abandoned the corridor, that would come back to me if a rail banking agreement wasn't in place.
Mm-hmm.
I hope that made sense.
Mm-hmm.
Mike, one thing I've forgotten over all these years, I assume that if the railroad needs the land for rail traffic in future again, however unlikely that may be, we're entitled to compensation, probably
Correct.
at the going rate of the day.
That is my understanding.
You'd expect it anyway.
In our case, obviously this is a wild hypothetical, right? It's almost inconceivable.
Agreed.
They would ever
Not much
have
demand
for it. But yes, we would be entitled to, as I understand it, negotiated compensation.
And who do you mean by we? The town of Southampton or the?
I'd like it to be us personally, but it would be the town.
The town. Okay.
Since it was the town who's entered into this agreement.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
So it's a fiddly point, but people I'm sure this is going to come up later in this meeting. There's now a lawsuit from a small number of abutters here in town claiming that by entering into a rail banking agreement, the federal government has taken their land, which is simply, it's a little fiddly to argue, but that's not what happened because it wasn't their land. Right. The railroad has had title to that property, since the mid 19th century. And when those abutters purchased their parcel, they were not purchasing the rail corridor. They were just purchasing, they were purchasing a parcel from the previous owner, which clearly did not include the rail corridor. So it's a funny kind of argument they're making, which frankly makes no sense. We're not taking anything from anybody. Rather, we're preventing, I guess, I don't think I would say this, well, I'm sure there's a more delicate way to frame it, but we're preventing a reversion.
Yeah, that lawsuit seems to be making its way around. I've seen it both electronically and in print now, but just in case anyone doesn't know about it, I mean, I've not been contacted. The committee email address has not been contacted. I don't know if there's been a resource for generating information or if it's as simple as, it sounds like there's been a transaction, so someone's trying to jump on it and take action. But other than this here, I don't have any other additional information on it.
My understanding, though, it's a lawsuit against the federal government for compensation.
Right. Perfect.
Can I bring up some other things regarding the deed?
Absolutely.
So one is just in case people didn't have a chance to look at it. It is the deed covers the full length of the rail corridor in Southampton, from Westfield up to East Hampton, Coleman Road, actually from Coleman Road down to the Westfield border. And there are two properties written in as excluded on the south of Route 10, and I don't know what the implications of that are. And I did ask Ed for any other documents that came with the closing deed, just so we can try to understand that. And also at one point, forgive me, this is historical, maybe misinformation. One of the things that was holding up closing on a deed at one point was who would own the rails and the value of the rails. And I don't actually think that's addressed in anything I've seen. And it'd be good to clarify that because there may be some financial benefit to the Greenway completion process that if Southampton now owns those rails for sale. So I've asked for clarification of that, and anything I get from Ed, I will share.
Excellent, thank you. That also brings up another point I wanted to clarify just for the sake of conversation is that while the deed specifies all of Southampton, the scope of this project ultimately was just for the Coleman Road to College Highway or the Sheldon's Ice Cream Shop corridor specifically. So there's a lot of questions about Brickyard Road, and it's interesting because the residential, it's a little bit more dense and the houses are a little bit closer there. We haven't really considered it, and in this portion of the project, we don't know what's going to happen. And I think Westfield will actually have a lot of influence on how the gap is closed in future years. But just in case that comes up again in the future, I don't have any helpful information or strategy on Brickyard Road at this point.
So if I can add further information.
Sure.
I have spoken with Dan Call, who's part of the Friends of the Columbia Greenway. I spoke with Allison McMorty, who's the city planner for Westfield. And I spoke with Craig Dela. I'm sorry?
She's a city engineer.
Thank you, city engineer. And with Craig De La Pena, some of that was getting letters of support for a grant. But it sounds like there are definitely plans to be working on from the Westfield River, the Temperance Park, up to the Southampton border. But there's some uncertainty where that's going to show up and, you know, what the state wants to do and what Westfield wants to do. So I think there's a planning in process, but it's by no means settled.
Do we know where along the rail corridor those exclusions are? I know one belongs to Mark Reed.
And that's right where the rail crosses the road, Brickyard Road.
Which crossing? I think there's two crossings.
It's the first crossing.
Closer to College Highway. It's actually down
Yes.
Highway.
Yes, before you get to Gilbert Road.
Okay.
Yep.
And,
It's that piece of property on the right.
It's like the first house north of, is it North Road that comes in on the left? Not North Road, the road before North Road. It's a house on your left if you're going towards Westfield on Brickyard. It's first house just before you get to that first left. And I'm forgetting the name of the road. But I have
one of the presidential roads there.
No, it's right after the presidential roads. And I have the house number. If you want, I can give it to you. But and I have maps. I can try to show you if this is helpful.
It's not physically obvious, just in case that there's a few houses that are so close to it, and it's
not clear why either. Yeah.
Right.
Is that Valley Road is what you're talking about?
It's Valley. Yeah, it's just before Valley Road. The last house before you get to Valley Road. Thank you.
Oh, okay. So the first crossing of Brickyard Road is clear then.
Yes, it's the house on the right, just before the crossing.
Before Gilbert Road.
Before Valley Road.
It's as you're going down Brickyard, it's the first crossing. House on the right, just before the first crossing.
Oh, that's Reed's?
Yes.
That's a problem then.
And why they're excluded.
But his property is abutting, not dissecting.
But anyway, it's not a problem for what we are planning.
No, not at
the current time.
Not at the current time.
But clarification would be helpful.
Yeah, I just know that a future bike path up Route 10 would be pretty infeasible just with the hills, and and the rail is just the rail corridor is much more adventitious. But if there are already properties that the railway gave up, then that's a big impediment there.
I have a map Do people want to try to look at a map, or is that too small to see?
You can see it I'm on Google Maps. You can see it there. You can see the crossings there as well. And the president, it turns out, is Calvin Coolidge. Coolidge Drive.
And the Reed's property is on the right.
Can anyone see this, or is it ridiculous? Okay. No,
That's pretty
I had a
tough.
feeling it wouldn't be helpful.
Yeah, I don't know, Mark.
Yeah, I maybe it doesn't necessarily pertain, I guess, to our discussion at the moment. It's a difficult subject. I've heard good arguments for both for again and against continuing down Brickyard versus Route 10. It's interesting to debate, and I like doing the research on it, but maybe because it doesn't really correlate to this first phase right now, it's not really answers that we need to provide at the moment. So I don't know how it'll shake down. I do hope that, whatever's considered, if the state is involved, I've gotten the impression from Westfield that the state is pushing to close the gap. I just hope it's not rushed and careless, so that it's not a capable, family-friendly, a lane on Route 10 would be a useless addition. Something separate and safe and well thought out and strategized is obviously preferred, but terrain, elevation, things like that obviously will play a part as well. So it'll be interesting, but either way, I guess because it wasn't part of this scope, maybe we don't need to beat it to death.
I don't think it should stop us from pursuing this 3.5 mile.
No, not at all.
I hate for anyone on Brickyard to rise against progress too, if there's worry that we're advancing, but we don't necessarily know the facts yet.
We can stay in touch with Westfield engineering office or whoever else in Westfield, just to make sure we know what's going on and continuing communication.
Yeah, they've been good allies so far.
Yeah, Mark, I just want to actually, Chair, can I raise a question since I'm not a committee member?
Feel free, absolutely.
Or an issue. I raised this in conversation with Mark earlier. It strikes me that we should absolutely stay in touch with the planning people in Westfield and keep open the possibility that we have a little influence about their choice of route, because their choice of route vitally affects Southampton, whether it's 5 years or 10 years or 15 years down the road, because it'll be on Southampton to someday complete the corridor. So there are, the choices Westfield makes are of vital interest to us in the next phase of this project. And we should, de minimis, stay on top of it, but possibly see if we can have some influence over that. I'm not sure what the mechanism is, but certainly, being present in their conversations and weighing in can't hurt.
Yeah, I agree 100%. And I've actually found them to be very transparent and very helpful. And they've invited me to their in-person meetings. And I think they meet either electronically or in person pretty frequently. Dan Call, as Mark mentioned, is very friendly and really helpful. They have no shortage of information and thoughts to share. So it's great to keep in touch with them and see how they're progressing. And I think it will help.
I'm not sure if Dan Call is on the same page as the city engineer. So we need to work both with the city engineer and the Columbia Greenway also.
They're a big group. Yeah, of course. I mean, there's city employees, there's the friends, and then maybe a board. I forget the total number, but they are a big, very active group. So yeah, I'm not too surprised about that. Okay, anything else on that topic, of course, is welcome. Feel free to shout it out, or we can move on to general engineering and next steps discussion. Okay, so engineering wise, I admit I have more questions and answers, but it's worth talking it out. I believe Ed is not here to speak for himself. I believe Ed is scheduled to meet with Ty and Bond. My interpretation is that it would be the most expeditious, quickest, and simplest method moving forward to work with Ty and Bond. And they can help outline not only the, I guess, engineering process, but also how we can spend down available funds. I think that is a critical piece because we have grant funds with deadlines, but I'm not terribly sure of how it will all come together, representation from the company, and maybe how invoicing or spending will work. Dan, I realize that you have to be, separate in some regard, but if you have knowledge of how relationships like this work in some regard, that may be helpful too, of course.
I know that Ed sent Ty and Bond an RFP, I believe, 2 Fridays ago, and the engineers are currently working on that response. They have a meeting scheduled with Ed tomorrow to hash out the scope. And I think one large big spend item will be the survey, which from what I understand will be over $100,000 just to do the survey of that 3.5 mile corridor. So that will help to spend that amount. I think there are still a lot of questions on the engineer's side about the scope. And I think in talking with Mark, I think the funding is a big concern too, because I think the DOT tip is 2027 is when those funds are earmarked for construction. So we have 4 years to design this corridor. But the way the funding mechanism will work is that you typically only get funding for 1 fiscal year. So that's something that we'll need to hash out and try to figure out how to make all that work.
So just to clarify there, the Mass Trails grant that we had gotten, we thought was $300,000 is actually $400,000 with a 20% match from the town. And so there's $500,000 potentially available, but because of the late acquisition of the deed, it's putting it at the end of the funding, maybe as short as June 30th, 2023, which may be a real challenge for what Ty and Bond would want to do, or the town would want Ty and Bond to do. So that's one of the issues. Is it's a short time frame that we don't know if the Massachusetts would extend the grant into the following fiscal year, but we have to assume that they won't, because at least one grant we lost in the past because they wouldn't extend it.
Mark, was that Mass Trails, did you say?
Yeah, we had a 2022 Mass Trails grant. We applied for $300,000, and when they extended it, people to ask for more, we put it in for another $200,000. We got 100 of that. We didn't know that we got that 100 until just the last month. They sort of didn't tell us, but anyhow, so we have money for the contractor, and Ty and Bond at this point most likely is to actually do the work of the survey and design and structural engineering, but it's putting them in a tight bind of what they can do in that time frame. One of the things going forward is, we talked last time about putting a grant together for the next fiscal year, which we have a grant to go in on May and February, but by February 1st. And again, we may be asking for too much in too tight a time frame because the process may take more than another year and a half, for example. So that's one of the things that the town and the consulting firm and us as a committee need to sort of sort out, as whether we can negotiate with the state about stretching over 2.5 years instead of if we get more money, for example.
And if we're looking at 4 years for design and engineering, is that on the lean side, or is that a generous amount of time for the company?
I think 4 years is a generous amount of time. I think that's driven more by Mass DOT and what they have earmarked for this project in 2027. It could probably be cut into 2 or 3 years. That's typically what it would take between permitting and design.
Okay. Do you have any experience with if this project is listed on the TIP plan? Is there any chance that could plus or minus a year or two, if all the ducks are aligned before FY27, let's say.
I'm not sure, but perhaps with the conversations that are happening tomorrow with Ed and the engineers, maybe they can ask that question and see if they can, dig into that a little further.
Okay, I'll share that with Ed again.
Is somebody from the committee going to be at that conversation?
I've not heard about it or been invited, so I do not know.
I have heard about it, but not been invited.
Would it be possible for a committee member to just show up?
Suppose you need the link or meeting information. I can definitely at least ask about it to see if we can get the information firsthand.
And I could go. I have the flexibility to go because you're probably working.
It's a town meeting. It's open to the public.
I don't know if it's a town meeting.
Yeah, it's not. It's Ed is meeting with the consulting firm.
Oh, maybe not a town meeting.
It's not a town meeting the same way. So.
Yeah. I'm not trying to stir the pot, but it would just, Ed has a lot on his plate.
Yeah, I would like to get to the point, know what we're, get quick answers and know what we're working with here and give Ed information, as opposed to have to go back and forth with a middleman. I would do anything to make things easier, of course.
It'd be really great if we could be there. If at least one of us could be there.
Well, I'm happy to at least ask and inquire with Ed directly. And if anyone else wants to volunteer to try to take things off Ed's plate, we'll try to sell it, then feel free.
That would be great.
So maybe just sending an email tonight or something.
Yeah, it's a late notice, so I don't know if he'll be able to do that, but it would be great.
Yeah, I don't know if it's Zoom in person. If it's Zoom, it's really nice and easy, but I'm not sure the format.
Yeah, me neither.
But I don't know if you heard my Zoom kicked out for a second, but I was just suggesting I wouldn't ask Ed. I would just tell Ed that one of us.
I agree.
Oh, one of us can be there? Yeah, you're kicking
Lost
out
audio.
again.
What time is the meeting?
We have no. I don't know.
Oh,
I don't know.
where? You don't know that either?
Don't know.
I could go in the afternoon if we can find that out.
Okay. Yeah, I'll ping Ed right after this and see what I can learn. And if I don't expect a response from him tonight, but if I get anything back or anything helpful, I'll share.
I hope not. Yeah.
Okay. What else, Mark? Did you have any other questions on engineering or next steps? Anything that we as a committee should tackle?
But again, going back to grants and funding. So at the last meeting, we had talked about submitting another Mass Trails grant for 2023. The cycle's on and due by the February 1st. There's a group of the ad hoc grants committee who's been working on getting something ready for submission. And with minor adjustments of budget stuff after the meeting that Ed has tomorrow, that's why I know about the meeting, we're probably ready to finalize that, the grant. It's in good shape, except deciding on final budget stuff. So, and it just, the other side of that is we're going to need matching grants, 20% match from the town. And we also talked about getting a submission ready for the Community Preservation Committee for those matching grants. And I was working with Janet, and together we have a good draft ready to go to the CPC. And Ed's seen it and Chris Fallis has seen it. And again, the exact number that needs to go with that to get the 20% is that's part of the needs to be finalized. But I think we're ready to do that. In which case, tentatively that again, Janet can speak to this best. The process is the CPC needs to meet, and then there needs to be a special town meeting to take a town vote to approve those funds, ideally before June, when a grant would be available. So that's all in progress at this point.
Yeah, and the grant for the 2023 Mass Trails is pretty much written, and we have the letters of support from the politicians, and it's I think it's ready. The grants committee. Well, Mark and I will be meeting with them tomorrow, and the plan is to submit it on Friday.
So Wednesday is the meeting.
The meeting is on Wednesday.
2:30.
The date is Friday. It's pretty much ready to go.
Yeah, thank you both for helping with that too. It's been really helpful having you chase down funds and get that going. And same with Caitlin on the ad hoc grants committee too, and Chris Fowles. They've been super helpful with generating funds. So excellent work on that.
Yeah, the grants committee has been great. They've been very helpful and supportive. But we'll see. Fingers crossed.
Yeah. It seems like it'd be helpful, but we also need an outlet to get those funds spent, don't we? Which is tricky right now.
Again, Dan, this is sort of asking you in generically because it doesn't. My guess is if we get a 2023 grant, we have 18 months to spend a lot of money rather than just 6 months, but it may need to be spread out over a minimum of 2.5 years. And how to negotiate that with if funds are really available from the state and how we can get funding to do that. Separate from what, but I think 18 months is with permitting and stuff is not realistic.
It's probably still not enough time, especially, we don't even know what triggers, what permitting triggers we're going to hit if we get into MIPA and things like that. That could really extend our permitting timeframe quite a bit.
So it's my ideal, without speaking out of lack of knowledge, is if we can sort of ideally get funding and have enough time for 2.5 years of work to get it at least as close as we can at that time.
Either that or just ask for less money in this round, knowing that you're going to apply for another grant the following year to just keep things moving along.
Yeah.
If they can't be flexible on time frame, I think that's what we might need to do.
The way it's worded is everything except construction is meant to be a 1-year grant. But they actually gave flexibility on the acquisition funds. They gave us $100,000 for acquisition and did stretch that out because they knew it was in progress. So we don't know exactly how it's going to play out, but we have to assume it's just the 12 months of the fiscal year.
Although we were pretty careful in the way we worded the grant to allow for extending the time for permitting for the MIPA grants and the historical, the historical stuff. So we'll see how flexible they are. But yes, it's an issue. Yeah. Did you? Does everybody have access to that grant? Grant to be able to review it, Mark? That Google Doc. Forgetting how. I know
it's not very different from the prior 2022, and although the new members haven't seen it, that had been distributed, but it hasn't changed too much from the original. We can try to send it out again. I did send it to some people.
I know I saw it. I don't know if it went to the whole group. Would it be helpful to either of you to have additional folks in for suggestions or editing?
It's sort of getting late.
Yeah. Okay.
I think, by all means, if we get to the point of substantive stuff of making it work, if we get the money, but I think actually for the application, it may just get too challenging. There's nothing there that ties us to anything.
Dan, you got a chance to review it, right?
Yes. Yeah, I did go through it once.
Yeah.
Yeah. If the timeline, again, one more look at it if you have a chance. So.
Yeah, that was important just for the expectations for what Ty and Bond could do in the time frame, I think.
Right. Yeah, and I did forward that on to the engineers to review as well. And I think they were planning on making some edits after tomorrow's meeting.
Good.
Okay, great.
Okay. Any other questions on either the design process or seeking grant funds?
Does anything more need to be done about the request for CPC funding?
I think probably after the meeting on Wednesday for the grants committee, we'll have budget tied down, and part of it gets a little confusing about what the total amount is, because there's some money we got from the state, there's some money we lost in a grant from the state. We've requested some of this be actually in-kind services, so our volunteer time is worth something, Ed's time is worth something against that 20% match. So the exact number that it's going to look at has not been set. But I think at that point, the wording is very simple. So, one paragraph or one long paragraph. And so if Janet, if you're okay, we run it by you again and then submit it formally and ask the committee to take action on it.
Yes, I'm fine with that. But I'd also like to say, if you think you might want to ask for just a little bit more, our terms usually are that any funds that are not used are returned back to the Food Preservation Committee. So if you think maybe a little bit more might not be exorbitant. And also I have notified Virginia that the proposal is coming.
Okay. So we can look at that. We can look at the amount number after the meeting tomorrow and ask for more if we think we might need it.
And then just return it. Yes.
Just return it if we don't.
Yeah.
Sure.
I think that's a good idea.
So I have a question regarding, and this is somewhat goes back to Dan and the group as a whole. It seems like we want a communication process between Ty and Bond and the committee. And Dan, I'm assuming that would not be a good thing for you to do. Is that correct?
Right. I think a person by the name of Alex Fagnan, he's going to be the project manager for the project. And I think a direct line between the committee and him would be more appropriate.
And it seems like one person would be easier for them. And then that person can communicate to the committee.
Yep.
What's his name again, Dan?
Alex Fagnan.
Okay.
His dad actually owns Fleury Lumber. So local connection.
Good.
So again, I'm willing to be that person. I think my skills could fit that. So if, depending on what the group wants to do, I'll just put that out there.
With a project manager, I had actually joined a meeting from Westfield, and they had a Boston company working on some section of their projects. And it seemed as if they had the engineering firm answering questions from the town, and there was a lot of attendees and everything. Is that a common expectation in a project like this, that once research is done, surveying is done, there's some prep on what the project could look like? The engineering firm then kind of stands in front of questions from residents or butters to address really what are the main concerns, what is it going to mean to your property, things like that, or should it funnel through the committee first?
That's typical.
Okay.
I've seen that in a lot of cases where the engineer representing the town would be answering those types of questions in a public forum.
Okay. Yeah, I think that would be great. I think that's far out in the future, of course. Go ahead, Mark.
I had a question. Actually, one of the things that's going to hopefully be talked about a little later in the meeting is our communications with the town. And one of the questions, again, for Dan, I realize you can't answer specifically, is what typically would be the timing of when the consulting firm would recommend a formal meeting with town members to get input? Is it a month out? Is it 6 months out? I think just to help our expectations.
I think it all depends on how quick progress happens. The survey component and the delineation component is going to take some time. And then once all that data is in, then it may be appropriate to to have some sort of open forum to get input from the community, but you really need to acquire that data first.
So it's at least 4 months or something?
Probably something like that. It's got to be 4 to 6 months into the process, I would think.
Hopefully before we right now. Thank you.
Yeah, so I was thinking about two separate events here. One is, of course, having the engineering firm prep for realistic questions from residents, but also having us on the committee side prepping to educate residents when they will get their opportunity, so to speak. So Mike had asked about this recently. We don't really have a true forum for not getting into conversation, but giving news that's factual news to the town residents as far as where does the project stand. And then when the time comes, if we do have an engineer able to answer questions, how do we get residents to that engineer to get their questions answered? And there's really nothing active, nothing proactive on our end for getting news out there. So I've always thought it would be great. I mean, I realize something like Facebook is kind of a necessary evil. People use it to communicate, but it can lead to, rampant information of all types. But it's free, it's agile, it's easy to populate, it's quick to set up. Websites take more work and often aren't free. But either way, I guess we're at a point now where I feel like something is better than nothing. So of course, I'm always looking for input on that. But if nothing else, I think at this point, it would be wise to at least have a committee specific or project specific Facebook or some outlet for things like announcements, news sources, and just factual statements on the project.
Can I speak to that, Chair?
Absolutely. Yep.
Mr. Chair.
You can feel free. Mike.
Well, no, I mean, my interest in getting back involved with the committee is fairly bounded. I mean, I feel like the way I can best contribute would be around these communication issues. So in a very preliminary way, I had a conversation regarding what you just raised. I had a conversation with Ed today, Ed Gibson, just asking him what we can and can't do communication wise. And unfortunately, it's actually, at least in the digital domain, we're really quite constrained to using the town website, which has a Greenway page for what it's worth. And I'm assuming we can also piggyback on the town's Facebook page a little. I'm not very happy about that because I can pretty much guarantee you that neither of those are optimized in either terms of either user friendliness, information richness, or search. But Ed was pretty clear that we have to work through. I'm just going to say the town channel, for lack of a better word.
Do you know why?
I'm assuming there's chapter and verse in the Massachusetts general law that that's an assumption on my part. It was a very quick call. I'm pretty sure Ed was not being arbitrary because he's not an arbitrary kind of guy. So I think it's just legal constraints. So if we take that at face value, either A, we can just accept that and work through the town with all the limitations that implies. Because frankly, just from a pure search perspective, I suspect that if we could update the town's webpage all we want, but if somebody did a search on Google.
Oops, it just dropped out, Mike.
So can you guys hear me?
You just
lost you.
I don't know what's going on. I'm sorry about that. So the other option that occurred to me is that we can try to, I'm not going to say re-engage, but recreate a friends organization, which doesn't have to be much. But if there is a friends organization, and there is still a 501, as I understand it, there's still a 501c3 entity out there known as the Friends of the Greenway. It probably doesn't have any members right now, but it exists, I believe, as a legal entity. That entity could do whatever it wanted in the digital domain because it's essentially a private not-for-profit, unconstrained by town rules. So that would be a way to communicate more robustly.
Tammy, go for it.
Well, that's, I'm not a member yet. I'm just floating. It's a direction I would want to pursue if I, am appointed to the committee.
Mike, I am so happy that you brought the Friends of the Southampton Greenway back up. Last time I was president for the group when Patty Murray left.
Yeah.
Jen Roberge is the treasurer and she maintains the checking account. We had a website.
You bet.
And we had things out there that we had done. I don't know if it's been maintained or updated or anything, but by all means, I know there are lots of people that are interested in getting back onto a friends group. Not necessarily what you guys are doing, but helping out where we can. So I can try to see if get hold of Jen and see what has been done and if the Facebook page is still going.
Yeah, I would assume that's well, actually, I shouldn't speak. Well, I'm just going to speak. I know I'm not. Stop me anytime, Mr. Chair. That's a lovely offer. And it's great that there's enthusiasm out there. I mean, assuming that the select board does appoint me, I would be happy to act as, I guess, as the committee's liaison with, a reconstituted friends group. I think that would be a great way to build, both directly to build support in the community and also, again, provide that kind of vector for communicating in the digital domain, that we can't really do as robustly as we'd like as a town committee. By the way, Tammy, there is a checking account and there's probably money in there.
About $2,000.
Oh,
Wow.
I thought we had 3.
I don't think it's quite that much. I reached Jen last July, I think it was, and I'm pretty sure she was able to give me the figure. And that happened because I wanted to remind her that they'd not gotten out I've forgotten the name of the card, the form you have to send in every year when you're a nonprofit.
Yep.
That hadn't been done in the last couple of years, but that's not enough to blow up the 501 status. They have a little more patience than that. And I believe that Jen's plan was to wake up and act on that.
Yeah, well, I think the IRS is not in a position to go after small 501c3s right now.
Makes sense.
The bank. So again, I would propose that, were I to be on the committee, this is something I would be really interested in helping out with, is kind of helping catalyze that committee again. And because they even have some money in the bank, which could, be more than ample to fund some preliminary stuff on the web.
Yeah, I'm all for this. I like the idea.
And I know just the guy to help us with it. Somebody who I work with in my business, who's a digital strategist, who's very local and very civic minded.
Nice. Yeah, I think we're long overdue for having some sort of agile, capable method of sharing news. I never really liked the idea, not so much going through Ed, but because we didn't have control of posting or really there was no simple way of having our own news posted as we made it. It just didn't seem like the best outlet to go through a series of connections and have it go to a site that wasn't really ours or dedicated to the project. And before I joined the committee, I saw breadcrumbs of the Friends group and some old information that just needed some revitalizing. But we've really got some good momentum now. So having some new up-to-date information, have some new resources and have that go to the residents who really seem interested in knowing what's going on with the project, as opposed to rumors and whisperings, but not actually knowing the status of the project. I think it's long overdue, and I'm all for it. So I think it's a great idea. And anyone willing to join in is great.
Yeah, just by way of example, Aaron, in response to this article in the Gazette that appeared today, the Friends, again, we can't do it really on the town website, but the Friends could post a quick paragraph, explaining the suit and explaining how it has no absolutely zero net effect on the viability of the project.
Mhm.
Yeah, something like that I think is always worth. It's related to the project, it's related to town residents and everything, so it should be spoken about. I don't want it to generate negative attention, but you're right. It's not exactly news from the committee, and it's not really for the committee. And because of that, yeah, we need to address it in some form. But I really wasn't sure what the best way to do so would be.
So just to clarify, it seems like on the town website in the committee, we can do a paragraph saying we've acquired the deed and we're working with we have the consulting firm that's beginning the planning process. We hope to have meetings in 4 to 6 months with with bringing in town members, but it can't happen until surveying and wetlands delineation is completed, or something like that. That's a brief 2 to 4 sentence thing. But if that's on the site, it may give at least some sense of where things are. And also, it seems like we can also direct people from the town to the Friends of the Greenway if there's a website that they have, right? So we can use the town sites to direct people to other sites that we have control over, I think.
Yeah, that's something that we could start immediately. Since we don't have our own resource, we could send news to Ed or whomever's posting those other sites and give those news pieces until another resource pops up, of course.
Well, once I'm, and all I can do is make an offer right now, but once I'm on the committee, I would be happy to own that bit. Develop messaging and run it by the committee, and then kind of ride Ed to make sure it actually gets up on the town website. I'm happy to do that.
Thank you.
Are members of the committee able to update the town website?
Not, as I understand it, not at present. However, there is a new town website in the works. I'm always a little skeptical about these timelines, but purportedly going live in the next, I think April came up in conversation with Ed today. And it sounded, from that conversation, it wasn't a commitment, but it sounded likely that we would be able to update our page ourselves. But that would be the new town website. That's not up yet.
Mm-hmm.
So that's something for the future. I think my sense right now is that right now Ed has to be our conduit.
But I think there's actually a contract for someone to update the web, the web system for the town. So that something's going to happen through a consulting firm.
It's a question of when and how well.
Yeah.
I think it's in the works.
Yeah.
Okay.
As far as the Friends group, I wasn't really sure how it was set up or controlled or led before, but I can be contacted through the Greenway Committee email address, of course. But other than that, I don't know how it comes together. I don't know if there's a representative, someone who leads the Friends group and then joins meetings such as this to communicate what they're doing. But if there's any interest or anyone listening who wants to help get that off the ground, I would support it. And then, of course, be in regular communication for any actions to follow, just in case anyone wants to help out with that.
Tammy, is this something we can help you with or someone else with?
At the present moment, I am unable to work on and be the president for that again, but we had Friends of Southampton Greenway website, and I wasn't able to get on to see if it's still active or not, but we had links that you could go to different places, and if you want to use the Southampton Community Facebook page, by all means, that is something really good, but just know that there are some people on there that are going to give you very negative feedback. A few of the abutters.
By the way, there is still a Friends of the Southampton Greenway Facebook page.
There is.
Yeah, I'm looking at it.
Good.
Do you know if the listserv is still functional? Because there was a listserv for that also.
don't know, but one could be created through
Yeah,
Facebook.
I saw a link to it in some of my old emails.
It's the last, I will say that the last bit of news is on November 27th, 2013. But
Oh, no.
10 years ago.
yeah, we had we hosted a celebrity bartender night at the late lamented Opa Opa.
Yeah, that's where we were able to raise
Yeah.
the $1,000, and then another business matched it.
Yep. So anyway, none of this should be difficult to reactivate. We just I think the Friends needs, frankly, I think you could do a lot if we could just find somebody to be, quote, president, to elect themselves president of the Friends.
Yeah.
That would be enough to give us a vector through which to start communicating.
Mhm.
So if anyone knows anyone, send them our way.
I would just like to say, along the lines of disseminating information to the town, maybe Tammy could help us on this. Should we get a table maybe at the Celebrate Southampton? I know it seems like a long way away, but it's really not. In August, and have a PowerPoint presentation or something about the Greenway and what the progress is and stuff like that, just as people walk around our table and get information. Tammy, is that something we could do?
Oh, yes, by all means. That is definitely something that I think actually Charlie McDonald had talked about doing it last year, but I don't know if they ever got everything completed for them having a table or not.
No,
but I mean, even if it was at, we have a April program meeting coming up for the Historical Society.
Mm-hmm.
We could try to get something with that going. Just something
is it too
that
soon for Celebrate Southampton? Is it too soon for Celebrate Southampton? Are you?
Oh no, Becky and I have already started planning.
Oh, good. Well, that might be a great if we could get a table there.
Yeah.
Also, maybe at town meetings in the lobby outside while people are waiting, or, that's a great place for friends of the committee to just be there to answer questions and to,
Well, I asked if we could have a handout, and I was told we could not. It's not an article. It's not part of, we couldn't have a handout. But maybe no, but outside in the parking lot, maybe. No, I was thinking maybe Tammy say that we could get a table. That might be good.
Yeah, we've actually, when we had the big override in that November, we were handing out flyers outside for people to get more information because they would not let us have a handout inside, which I thought was very strange because it was something being voted on.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, we have an election coming up, they're all in May.
Mm-hmm.
But there's the annual town meeting, the election that's coming up. So there are going to be several events where people are going to be coming in and out.
Mm-hmm.
That having a table set up is a very good idea, as long as you have information to hand out to them so that people, it's not just hearsay. They actually see it in black and white.
Yeah. Even a PowerPoint presentation. Do you have electricity that we could do a PowerPoint?
Oh, they're at the
at Celebrate Southampton?
That would be hard.
Okay.
If nothing else, there's a good chance we'll have a date for a community meeting that can be, with formal information be presented. At least tell people we have the date in, June or whatever, that there will be a meeting for information with the consulting firm present.
The library also is another one. Johanna really would like to reach out with different groups and have people do presentations there or give out information there. So that is another one to definitely contact the Edwards Library.
They're good.
That's a great idea.
My only question is whether we can do this through, and it's just a legal question, how much of this we can do through just this committee versus how much has to be done through the Friends. And I just don't know the answer. It's another question for Ed, I think, unless somebody else knows.
That's probably something worth bringing up tomorrow when we're meeting with him.
If you're meeting with him.
Yeah, I don't think my guess is we may not be invited.
Yeah. Well, that's that's an important question. And over the next, I don't know, half a year or something, or a year, probably, there's going to be much more active engagement with the community. So I think it's worth clarifying what the committee is able to do and what we can't do, and where the Friends might help us. And then, maintaining good communication with the Friends and supporting them, making sure that they get information as we receive it, so they're up to date.
I don't understand how Friends work. It seemed untouchable to me, but are they a group that would go to abutters who are having issues with the Greenway on their property? Would they go and talk with them and have meetings with them, or is that what they do?
I think that the expectation is that the engineers are going to be the ones who are communicating with abutters regarding those specific issues. Am I right, Dan, about that? Whoops.
Who are you asking?
Dan, but he just dropped off my screen.
Wow. Low battery at Dan's house.
That was a bad question.
Yeah.
But
I know when we were on the Friends and we were raising money, we were raising money so that we'd be able to put benches, or if an abutter did not like us, a particular hedge or fencing, that we would be able to help with that the Friends group would be able, if a tree fell down, we would be able to get in there and clean stuff up. We wanted to be able to do that kind of stuff. And that raising that money was what was letting us do that.
Mm-hmm.
So they
And
are.
also, and the other aspect of the Friends was, so it's both support, just because it's, it's sometimes hard for a town to do things. It just, it just gets complicated quickly. So, the idea of the Friends was to provide the kind of support Tammy described, but also to act as an advocacy group. Right. Just to get the word out to the community, advocate for the project, build voter support, and so on.
Is that what the Friends is? Is it an advocacy group, or I don't really understand their function?
Well, so if the committee is less able or less agile in sharing information, but if we can have a resource created where information is, then the Friends group, I picture the Friends group being able to point to where that information is and also reach out to interested town residents and say, hey, don't forget, there's going to be a meeting on such and such a day. You'll be able to get to the engineer first and you'll hear information firsthand, et cetera, et cetera. You're kind of getting the interest of the residents in a casual way, but getting them factual information, whereas the committee won't have that ability or resource to kind of chat as quickly or easily. So the Friends group is, I don't know, I keep using the word agile, but it's because you can have a thought, you can have news, you can blast it out to interested residents quickly, but guide them to the resource or guide them to the information. Not so much that you're knocking on doors, but you're providing the outlet for them to learn what they need to know more directly.
Because you guys are an elected group, you have to be aware of the open meeting bylaws and stuff, whereas the Friends group doesn't have to worry about that. We can have a conversation. We can have group emails going on and everything. We do not have to follow those.
If you look at Westfield or Columbia, Greenway, and Manhattan Rail Trail, the Friends group for both of those, they've evolved to some extent. Sometimes they're pushing the city to do something. Sometimes they're getting people to meetings. As Manhattan's gotten more developed, I think they're helping with maintenance and getting people out to maintain. So it has that flexibility, as Aaron said, to sort of get things moving depending on the stage where it is.
Mhm. Mhm. Okay.
So this was actually my last agenda point. We lost Dan, but he was here for the majority of the meeting. But we talked over all the topics I had. Does anyone else have anything unanswered or anything else you'd like to bring up before we adjourn?
I think it's been a good meeting. That's
Yeah.
all I have to say.
Good.
Yeah, thank you, everybody, for attending.
Move to adjourn the meeting.
Doric, any questions on minutes before we adjourn?
Yes. What's it going to take to get you people to use fewer words? Lots fewer words. Otherwise, I think it's all right.
Let me know if you have any questions. Maybe I'll work on the last meeting's minutes on those just missing pieces. And if anything else comes up, feel free to shoot an email over.
Okay.
Already. Did I hear a motion? I missed it, frankly.
Motion to adjourn.
Okay, there we are.
Second.
Okay.
Night.
All right. Thanks, everyone.
Good night.
Thank you.
Good night.
Good
Bye-bye.
night.
This government meeting is brought to you by Eastworks and our local cable subscribers.